Hi, welcome to the newest episode of the J-Karp Show. Today's episode is going to focus on one main topic, Major League Baseball. Yes, it's about that time of year again. Major League Baseball is back and in full swing. Well, no pun intended. And there's a lot of big storylines people have been wondering coming into the 2013 year. First is the Los Angeles Angels. Recently they signed Josh Hamilton, the former Texans MVP player, bringing more power to the Los Angeles Angels lineup, along with Albert Pujols and Mike Trout. But the question is, can they really play consistently? Because they have struggled all season so far, and I know we're only about 4 games in. But they need to get something going in this AL West division that's still tough with the up-and-coming Athletics and the red-hot Rangers. Now, speaking of the AL West, there's a new team in there this year. For the first time in a long time, the divisions are all evened out across the board as the Houston Astros leave the confines of the NL Central, or maybe the cellar, and head to the cellar of the AL West. Everyone's predicting these guys to not just lose about 100 games, some are even predicting them to lose 120. I'm going to predict they lose 115, something around there. At least 100. But believe it or not, they beat the Rangers in the first game of the season, 8-2. Yes, Houston beat the Rangers. You won't hear that probably at all the rest of the year, so you might as well enjoy it. But another big storyline we have is Miguel Cabrera, who was just so close to getting the Triple Crown, and now the Tigers are predicted to be another front-runner to get to the World Series this year after being swept by the Giants last year. With Miguel Cabrera and Prince Fielder back, along with star pitcher Justin Verlander, who I am proud to say is on my fantasy team, it's no wonder that they have such high expectations. And with a division like the AL Central, which really doesn't have a lot of competition, the Tigers could very well just take the division. There's true up-and-coming stars on the Cleveland Indians and on the Kansas City Royals, but it doesn't seem like it'll be enough to give the Tigers a run for their money. But anything can happen. 2011, no one predicted the Cardinals to win the World Series, and when the Rangers had into the last strike twice, Cardinals came back. They just wouldn't go away, as Joe Buck put it, and they ended up winning the series, being declared the greatest comeback team in history. Speaking of the Cardinals, there's a lot of issues within the Cardinals organization, and most of them fall under the category of injuries. Rafael Percal, their starting shortstop, is out for the season with Tommy John surgery. Chris Carpenter is out for possibly his entire career due to injuries. And on top of that, David Freese and Jason Motte have both started the year on the disabled list. Now they've scored, they're tied for some of the most runs in the entire league right now. But they have had poor fielding issues, which has affected their performance. And they just lost a heartbreaking game, 10-9 in 16 innings to the Arizona Diamondbacks. They lost that series 2-1. But the Cardinals have something great in their farm system. They have a deep farm system, arguably one of the best in baseball, that for years to come will help them rebuild a great dynasty. And with the much anticipated upbringing of Shelby Miller, who spent so much time in the minors, everyone is excited to see how this Cardinals team will do. But it looks like it's a red-hot race in the NL Central between the Cardinals and the Reds, with the Brewers honestly not too far behind. Those 3 teams will definitely this year be vying for that top spot to see who makes the NL Central Division champ. One more team in the NL Central I'm going to talk about, and that, I love talking about this, is the Chicago Cubs. They aren't going anywhere besides down. But with the Astros gone, that means there's only one team that could be in the cellar. Well, 2, either Pittsburgh or Chicago. But I see Chicago being in the cellar. Reason being, they just don't have a lot of great talent. They honestly don't. The Pittsburgh Pirates at least have some great playmakers like McCutchen that can at least give some sort of support, even though they've had a losing record for 20 years. But honestly, it's not enough for the Cubs. They don't have nearly enough. And that's going to cost them big in the long run. And they're over a century drought of the World Series title will continue. Now, there's another issue, and that's in the AL East. The Orioles and Blue Jays are two of the hottest teams right now, and for many good reasons. Last year, the Orioles decided that, you know what? We're tired of being in the cellar. We're going to kick it into high gear, and we're going to show these guys who's boss. And that's exactly what they did. They took the entire Major League Baseball by storm. And I remember clearly, because I still have the issue, Sports Illustrated, who we all know is great with their predictions, like that Yankees-Philly World Series that we expected 2 years ago, predicted that the Orioles would be an automatically 100-loss team. They won over 90 games. Their first winning record in 14 years. The playoff drought ended, and they made the playoffs, and they lost in the thriller against the Yankees. They had a great run. But the fact is, there's another team, along with the Orioles, who could very well be competing for that top spot, and that is the Toronto Blue Jays, who have went out of their way to spend money to get players. I mean, out of nowhere, they've gotten all this money, and they signed the best free agent pitcher on the market in knuckleballer R.A. Dickey, who I think is going to have a major impact on the Blue Jays. Now, will it be enough? I'm not sure, because we all know that the Angels, when they signed Pujols last year, were predicted to go all the way and win it all, and they had to watch the playoffs at home as Pujols' former team, the Cardinals, was one game away from the World Series. So anything can happen. Like I said, it's baseball. But there's a lot of interesting stories going into this year. And another one is whether Jamie Moyer will come back and pitch at 50 years old. Not considered the greatest pitcher of all time, but still the ageless wonder, if you may call him. 50 years old, he's the last active player from the 1980s after this year's retirement of Omar Vizquel. That leaves Jamie Moyer as the last active player from the 80s, which is a very great accomplishment for him. And it's just a matter of time before he does finally do call quits. But the question is, when will that be? Now, one more storyline I'd like to talk about. It's all these predictions the other sports outlets do. They are so freaking biased. I just got the newest issue of Sports Illustrated that stated, they gave their preview, and I read their previews because they do have some good information, good stats, and it's not like it's inaccurate. But they give teams who they predict to be at the top of the game the least type of worst-case scenarios possible. Like, they still think no matter what, the Nationals are going to go deep into the playoffs, possibly back to the World Series. What, like it's impossible for them to have a losing record? I mean, that's what the entire Expos Nationals franchise was built off of, is losing records. You thought the Expos last game at their stadium was a memorable one? Yeah, it was for Met fans. They lost to 8-1. Any team, even if they had the best players, can still have a losing record. Two examples, Yankees, Angels. Boom, bar none. Can't judge a team by the players. And I know that might not make a lot of sense, but when you think about it, just because a team has talent by name doesn't mean they have talent in record. And that's why I think this is a big transitional year for a lot of teams who have recently hit the cellar, who are trying to find ways to move on up. Which is why, like I said, you have the Athletics, who won it last year, who didn't win the World Series, of course not, that was the Giants. But they won the division, they made it, and they gave the Rangers a run for their money too, but the Rangers eventually beat them. But who in their right mind could have predicted that the Athletics would be in the playoffs while the Angels sat at home? Nobody. I sure didn't, and I don't even like the Angels, besides Mike Trout. Honestly, I can't give you my prediction on who's going to win the series, because besides the Astros, the Cubs, and the Twins, and the Padres, and the Red Sox, besides those teams, it's anyone's trophy. Maybe I'll include the Mariners and Rockies in that, because Lord knows they won't make it. But I'm just saying that anybody, whether they're in first place or third, as long as they're in the playoffs, it's open for them to win it all. And that's what I love about baseball, and any sport for that matter. Just because you're a certain seed, that doesn't mean you can't win it all. I mean, look at Florida Gulf Coast in NCAA. They were the 15th seed, screwed up everybody's bracket. But they had a great run, and I'm proud to say that they had a great run for a 15 seed. But honestly, I don't know. It's MLB baseball. Anything can happen. It's just like any other sport. Now, one more topic I want to talk about before I do a special tribute. It's Kevin Ware from Louisville. For those of you that watched the Louisville Duke game, you could tell that he had the worst injury I've probably ever seen on sports, if not ever, in a long time at least. It's reminiscent of Sid Vicious in WCW when he jumped off the second rope and snapped his leg in two. It brings back memories for wrestling fans of that moment, but this one was more heartfelt. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a great guy. But the thing is, Kevin Ware just told his team to win. He's on the ground. The iconic pictures of him holding his teammate's hand while they're crying. I mean, I wish nothing but the best for Kevin Ware. He's a guy with amazing talent. If he goes to the NBA, which I'm sure he will have an amazing career. And I think that this whole injury and how he recovers is really serving as an inspiration for athletes who do have injuries and feel like they have setbacks. But it doesn't seem to stop him. Now, ladies and gentlemen, comes to my tribute. Yesterday, Roger Ebert, the famed movie critic, passed away at the age of 70. He had suffered from thyroid cancer and had lost the ability to speak and eat. It was a sad loss in the community because he was such a renowned critic. He was honestly an inspiration for me and a lot of my fellow newspaper classmates because he was such an expert at the field of journalism. He could literally make or break a movie. I mean, it's just amazing what kind of an impact this man had. I will never forget his interview or his review of the movie North from 1994. He said it was the worst movie him and Gene Siskel had reviewed in their 19 years together at that time. And it was a bomb of a movie. And they dropped the A-bomb on that movie. And everybody, it seemed like the worse the movie was, the greater their reviews were. But besides them arguing all the time and them bickering, they just had so much fun. They were like brothers. And then in 1999, Gene Siskel passed away. A few years later, Ebert was diagnosed with cancer, which left him unable to speak and eat. But he continued to write reviews. His last review was for the movie Hook, which he gave a thumbs down. The day before he passed away, he said he'd take a leave of absence. Well, it looks like he's taking an extended leave. It's a sad loss. And even if you're not a fan of movie criticism, you can't help but admire Roger Ebert. I'm a fan of his work. I'm a fan of him because he truly shows what kind of passion. If you have a passion for something, you got to stick with it. You got to go with it. You got to keep going. And you can't let obstacles in life stop you, because he sure as hell didn't. He kept going. So Roger Ebert, he had an amazing life, respected by hundreds of millions of people, maybe even billions worldwide, because they all tuned in. And now Siskel and Ebert are up in heaven reviewing movies and giving them thumbs up or thumbs down. Thank you for listening to this episode of the J-Karp Show, and I'll catch you later.